Hello, I'm Phil Little, host of the Private Investigator Experience podcast with an update of important news out of the Middle East with Israel and Hamas. You might have heard already, but if you haven't, the last kingpin went down with Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, who orchestrated the October 7th, 2023 murderous attack on Israel, slaughtered all the Israelis they could, over 1,200, took 250 hostage. He was killed this day, and it wasn't an intentional act where they had targeted him. They saw three terrorists in an operation, and they brought the building down on them, and one of them turned out to be Sinwar, and they were innocently enough in the Philadelphia corridor right near where he could cross over into Egypt. They confirmed that he had on his person hundreds of thousands of dollars, lots of cash, and several passports, and apparently was headed for the exit that was still open underneath the border. Now, interesting enough, he didn't have his wife and children with him, so I guess he assumed that they could make it on their own. But that just kind of sounds like the guy that he is. Now, it is believed, according to intelligence coming out, that he'd been staying in the tunnel where the six Israelis were murdered a few weeks ago. And they were concerned about Sinwar all the time, that he was surrounded by the hostages, so they didn't want to take him out, even though they had the ability and had him targeted at different times, but he was surrounded by the hostages. So it's apparent with the information and intelligence they got off of his body. Unfortunately, this wasn't a bombing attack where they razored the building and knocked everything out and down and the bodies were mutilated. His body was intact. They was under some rubble. And with him were two of the top commanders of Hamas. So they were able to gather up the evidence, intelligence, the paperwork he was carrying, documents, money, passports. So he was on this journey and going to let the other Hamas members carry on, I guess. So this was, if anyone thinks that God is not watching out over Israel, they're living in another world that I can't imagine. Now, think of all of the evil perpetrators of these attacks, both from Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran, actually. Think of all of the leaders that have been taken out. And that's not by chance, folks. God said in his word, and I made a post that's on my YouTube channel a couple of days ago about answering the questions. Why is Israel being protected? Where did the animosity between the Arab world and the Jewish world start? And what does it look like going on now? What could happen? And where's it going to end? We know what's going to happen. Those of us who've read the book, the Bible, Revelations, we know what the end will be. So this is very, very awesome news. And they are now putting out the word over the Hamas area, over Gaza, that he has been killed. So what, Sinwar is gone. Their hope is over. So now they can, if they will come out and turn over all of the hostages and put their weapons down, they will be able to live. And the residents of Gaza, who have been the victims, so many of them, a lot of them were supporting Hamas, but there's a lot of victims. They're being made aware that in the future, Hamas will not be part of the reign of Gaza, that Sinwar is gone, and Israel will protect them and help them. And they've offered rewards to anyone that will give information and get the hostages back, lay down the arms, and realize this is over. And because Israel has got God on their side, and it's the God the one living true God, and he is fighting on behalf of Israel. So keep praying for Israel and all of the Jewish people around the world that are being targeted by this discrimination and anti-Semitism. And we'll also pray for the innocent people in Gaza. Gaza could have been a beautiful paradise when Israel turned it back over to the Palestinians in 2005. But Hamas got control and elected to destroy the agricultural and the other things that Israel had left there. And instead, think about this, folks. You that have some leniency towards supporting Hamas, they've taken billions of dollars, billions, from, yes, American taxpayers, European taxpayers, and out in the Middle East that have been pumped into their coffers, and they've left their people living in poverty. And the aid that would come in, they were charging and selling the aid at marked up prices to their own people while they were hoarding all this material underground, billions of dollars being spent, millions of dollars being siphoned off by the leadership that are living in luxury and have been in Qatar. So there's a lot we need to pay attention to and find out about. And as I've been calling out on my podcast, let's all become investigators. Find out what I'm finding out, what I'm doing all over the world. I developed intelligence sources. I developed people on the ground. But now we have research facilities. When I started out, I went out all over the world building this asset group personally, hitting the ground across Europe, the Middle East, the Far East, out in the Arab world, down in Latin America, and recruiting people. Now we have the ability with the internet to just find out so many things so fast. And you can sort through and find out the fake stuff. You can eliminate that. And if it's coming from the mainstream press, you can figure it's very slanted towards the left. So we just sort through that. But become an informed voter. If you're in the United States, coming up November the 5th, we'll tell the story if we're going to continue as a free country for the years to come and get our country back on a solid footing with inflation down, becoming an oil interdependent, undependent on the world, and the borders closing and dealing with all the tragedy that's been brought on by these illegals, and hundreds of thousands of criminals have come in. My intelligence sources and people on the border and out around the world, I tracked it all the way back down to Panama. And interesting enough, there are more Chinese now coming across the border, and just in recent weeks, than people from Latin America. What is that all about? And these aren't families. They're young guys that are military age and probably have already been trained. And we have the other ISIS and embedded terrorists that now have been let in, knowingly let in, my friends. When they did basic backgrounds, found out they were criminals out of prison in Nicaragua, they let them in. What is going on with our country? We need to take it back, folks. Stand up, step out of the crowd, get involved, pray for Israel, pray for the innocent Palestinians, and pray for your brothers and sisters, pray for your family, pray for our government leaders that there'll be sense come back in to the people as they vote this coming, many have already voted, and coming up on November the 5th. So keep alert, look up. Things are moving fast, changing fast, just as this shows on Sinwar today. So get involved, step out of the crowd, do your investigation, let your voice be heard, and look for the truth. You're not going to find the truth in the press or coming from publications in mainstream. It's not there. It's all slanted, and I don't get it. They're hurting themselves by supporting these leftist, socialist, Marxist-leaning ideas that ultimately will put them under bondage. They don't get it. The people that are supporting this leftist ideology, they're going to become victims. It happened everywhere in the world. When I started looking at terrorism years ago and studying and finding out about terrorism all over the world, one thing I found, which is what Hamas did. When I was looking at terrorism as recently as in the 80s in Europe, what turned the tide in France is when the terrorists made the mistake of doing something so evil, so atrocious, that the French people said, that's enough. And that took 12 bombs going off in Paris on one day. And the French people rose up, made their government push back and eliminate the terrorists from France. And they did that in a short period of time. When they stood up, we've got a lot bigger problem this time, folks. We've got millions and millions, multi-millions of immigrants in Europe that have not and have no intention of assimilating within the countries of France, Germany, England, for the most part. Now, you'll find some that are righteous, right people, but so many are coming saying, oh, well, you change your country to how we are. And they left the country, these countries, so many of them, because they were under stress. They were being persecuted. They didn't have enough. They were struggling to eat every day. Now they want to have the same kind of government in other countries they're coming to. Doesn't make sense. We need to have rules. We need to enforce them. Yes, we need an immigration policy that works. My ancestors came from immigration a long, long time ago, and probably most of everybody listening to this in America. Our ancestors came here to establish a free country where we could all have our freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom to own our weapons. And the weapon that we were given in the Constitution was not just for sporting. The founders of the Constitution said that the population should be armed so they could push back and keep overreaching government from making them slaves to a totalitarian government. Let's get involved. Thank you for listening to me today on this little rant, but it's an exciting day, and it's a time that we now need to reach out to help each other and be praying for the people back in particularly North Carolina, and those areas have all hit down through Florida and everywhere. But that tragedy up in North Carolina, and the people, we can't imagine. I just look at these pictures. It's hard for me to imagine. Folks, these people lost everything. Everything. Their homes, their cars, their livelihood, their business. And they're sitting there, they couldn't even get money because of banks being, and electricity being down, and ATMs being off the one. And many of them didn't have anything to go to. We need to be in there as we are. And it's not the government that's making a difference in North Carolina. It's the multitude of citizens, just like you and like me, and organizations who are getting involved in any way they can to bring relief. God bless them. God bless you. God bless your family. And may God bless